I am so glad that Owen uploaded this. It's going to save me so much time.
There's nothing to stop the people that want to, bring attention to the plight of the Palestinians from protesting.
This is absolutely correct. There is absolutely nothing stopping people from protesting about Israel's treatment of Palestinians, as long as they stay within the law.
But why do they have to do it under Palestine Action? Why can't they do it under any of the other groups together? Why is this
because they're targeting a weapons company, an Israeli weapons company, which is complicit in genocide, which is the crime of crimes.
Which would be terrible if it were true. There is no international legal ruling that Israel is committing genocide. Owen is referring to reports from 2 UN commissions that, for some reason, failed to take into account the actions of Hamas in exacerbating the condition in Gaza. They also overlooked the proximity in time between Hamas's hail of atrocities on Israel on the 7th of October 2023 and statements made by Netanyahu and senior Israeli officials, which they chose to interpret as genocidal in content. Any one of us may come across as genocidal after viewing phone footage of Palestinians murdering and torturing teenagers. Even so, there is no reason to bring the prescribed terrorist group Palestine Action into the protests. They historically made costly and on some occasions physically dangerous raids on subsidiaries of Elbit Systems, an Israeli arms firm. All these subsidiaries produce is unfinished components, nearly half of which are destined for use in production chains for sale outside of Israel. Since Labour's suspension, in September 2023, of any licenses that may have been used against Gaza, no British Elbit export is at all likely to have been used to attack Gaza, and none of those damaged or destroyed in Palestine Action raids were intended for deployment there either. Palestine Action's activities were remarkably ineffective against Israel. They didn't save lives or prevent a genocide that wasn't happening anyway.
The suffragettes, if we go back over 100 years, they committed far more extreme acts. They killed 4 people.
This is a comment on Palestine Action's prescription as a terrorist organization under the Terrorism Act 2000. This was because Palestine Action fulfilled the criteria of political motivation and attempting to influence a government by their actions combined with excessive property damage. However, they have weaponized their prescription by using a clause in the 2000 Act that criminalizes physically displaying or wearing anything that represents support for a prescribed organization. This is the real reason why Palestine Action are involved in so many protests, because they are not protests at all. They are mass acts of civil disobedience intended to discredit our government. Protesters just display a 2-message card, "I oppose genocide," or "saving lives is not a crime," neither of which protests against anything, combined with "I support Palestine Action," displaying of which is a criminal offense intended to get them arrested, so that their organizers can claim that the government is arresting people for opposing genocide. There is no involvement at all of the government in these arrests. It is just the police being forced to fulfill their duty by multiple lawbreakers. This deception of the public is the entire intention of these so-called protests.
Democratic means that the Palestinian people have to stop the British government exterminating their children.
This is so out of order on Owen's part here and, quite frankly, insane. The British government is absolutely not exterminating Palestinian children. It is a ludicrous idea. They have done all they can to avoid British exports being used against Palestinians in Gaza, including the F-35 program, which we could not withdraw from without severely damaging Britain's economy and heavily impacting on both British and international security. In the long run, it is the US who control the distribution of F-35 fighters and not the UK.
Well, the Palestinian people have no democratic right in the UK because we're in a different country.
Yeah, no, but the whole point is our country is facilitating that genocide.
Back to the non-existent genocide again, and Owen is clearly loving it. Yes, there are probable war crimes on both sides in Gaza, but genocide is a big leap. It requires solid proof of intent, and this does not exist for Israel.
Isn't it very hard line, Claudia, to say you can't, not only can you not belong to this thing, but you can't hold up a banner saying Palestine Action in Trafalgar Square?
I think when we condone or accept violence from any group for political means, then where does that stop? Because it doesn't have to be a point where we say, if you are being violent, causing damage or hurting people to further a political cause, just because...
Just on that, that's not... So Palestine Action do not promote violence. There was one incident where one person was prosecuted. The law exists already. If someone commits violence, there are sentences. That's why he's convicted by GBH without intent.
Violence is not just against people. Violence is also against property.
That's property. That's not...
It is if you take a sledgehammer. How is that not violence?
That's property damage. That's not violence. Violence is murdering children and slaughtering people like they're doing in Gaza.
Oh, it gets me so cross when people debate the law as if it were a piece of elastic. Palestine Action has been prescribed. It occurred thoroughly in accordance with existing law. Owen is correct that the law exists already. However, the political and activist aspects of Palestine Action's activity elevated it beyond the confines of criminal law and added a terrorist aspect to their actions. It wasn't so much their violence, although this was a factor. It was more the sheer level of property damage involved, because under British law this is considered a relevant factor. Another thing that affected their prescription was the nature of the organization. They operate on a cellular system with no hierarchical control, just a manual with a list of targets and advice on how to cause damage. This means that individual cells could become violently active without any constraint from elsewhere. Just like what happened in Filton when sledgehammers were taken along just in case, or in Scotland when incendiary devices were deployed around workers.
Breaking and entering, let's say.
Yeah, for an Israeli weapons company complicit in the crime of crimes.
Owen speaks here from his own association with Palestine Action and their chosen target, the British subsidiaries of Elbit Systems. In total denial of reality and of the minuscule, less than 1% contribution these factories make to Israel's arms intake. And the constraints placed upon their use by British international licensing rules, they consider these subsidiaries to be complicit with genocide. When I looked into this referral to the crime of crimes, because Palestine Action have been claiming this since 2020, I found that they are referring to a supposed slow burn genocide that is embodied by every act within Israel's history that has displaced Palestinians over the last 80 years. So neither is it a genocide as identified under the Genocide Convention 1948, it is not a genocide in respect of any immediate activity. It is not certain, when Owen refers to genocide, whether he is referring to the unsupported versions coined by the UN commissions or other random opinions, or if he really thinks that this slow burn definition holds water. Either way, insisting on the crime of crimes without supporting evidence or binding legal opinion is nothing short of arrogant. While I don't deny that there are almost definitely war crimes on both sides in Gaza, extended research into what is actually happening does not fit the Israeli genocide narrative. Hamas precipitated the current tragedy and set up Gaza so that it was impossible to get to their military tunnels except through civilian installations and the civilians themselves. While Israel has taken measures to warn civilians of impending bombing, Hamas has acted to prevent them escaping the area. Even during the current ceasefire, Hamas will initiate missile and mortar attacks from within civilian areas in order to provoke retaliation. The citizens of Gaza are stuck, there is no territory adjacent willing or able to take refugees, so they are constrained to move around Gaza, dodging the bombs. Hamas has been repeatedly accused by the United Nations, the United States, and Israel of blocking, diverting, and stealing humanitarian aid meant for Palestinian civilians. Hamas has been reported to attack civilians at aid distribution sites. It is not possible at present to establish who is responsible for crossfire injuries at these sites. If Hamas cared at all for Gaza's citizens, they would withdraw in full from Gaza. But they only consider them in terms of a human shield, or bodies to display to the world's press. Perhaps more could be achieved if protesters campaigned for Hamas to withdraw. Perhaps, if the pro-Palestinian protesters are that concerned for the civilians in Gaza, they should be campaigning for Hamas to withdraw from their stronghold and remove the reason for the bombings. This may be a faster and more effective solution than trying to get Israel to ignore an ongoing threat on its doorstep.